So this power is divine. It comes from God. People may ignore it, but the ignorance has consequences. Then we have countries and regions, continents, which have other traditions. They developed in different ways, and they don't understand Roman Empire tradition. So here we have conflict between how power is understood in Roman Empire tradition and Israel and other heritages. For instance, we have heritage in China, imperial heritage, in which traditionally the emperor was considered unique connection with God, so it was not run by the Spirit of God, but by a person selected by the Spirit of God, and that person would be called Son of Heaven. And that's why we have the tradition of mandate of heaven. So indirectly, China was run by Spirit of God, but in a different way than in Roman Empire and in Israel. And then there are many other traditions. So we have to have wisdom about it, how power is inherited in diverse countries and how it affects the actions of trade, currency movements, military cooperation, and many other things. So we have to come to that foundation of understanding this before we can have peace in the world. Because if peace is enforced by power that is specific to a unique location, then that power will have no positive effect on places that understand it in a different way. So we see that the way we understand power today is very limited. It doesn't have the content of complexity that defines the way people communicate with each other, develop connections with each other, and rely on strength of power coming from family houses. The strength of family houses actually is one of the universal ways in which people understand power throughout the world. That's one thing that is shared by all countries of the world. But when you look at political dialogues and political conversations, that power of the family house is totally ignored. And as a result, we have imbalances in the way people develop their the sense of security and safety. For instance, instead of focusing on moving people from one continent to another, power traditionally understood would help them be focused on their family houses and developing them in the ways that is modern and healthy and happy, and that creates their strength by not having that trauma of not belonging, homelessness. And that strength from family house sense of belonging, sense of security and safety, then creates opportunity to connect with other people who have that sense of security and safety in their family houses. So that vision of world peace comes from the foundation of natural way in which people develop power in family homes, family houses. So it's very different from political position. And one of the things that people do not understand about importance of strengthening family homes, family houses, is because we are focused on ideologies. And ideology depends on agreement, so on the will. And will can change. One day, those who live by various ideologies agree with you, another day they don't agree with you, don't want to have anything to do with this. There is no security and safety in this. In a family house, you belong. There's a place for everybody who is born in a family house. So we have to understand the importance of coming back to learning about it. And the reason is that the way things are run today in the world don't work. Look what we have. We have wars in Europe, not only between Ukraine and Russia, but now all of European military forces want to participate in it. Why? Because all of that Europe and all of the heritage of Russian Empire are displaced in the way they think about family houses. So instead of focusing their attention to develop their own family houses, cities, relationships between people as they used to do, now there's this sense of homelessness that they only belong in their professional lives or in their jobs, employment, and that became the only identifier of the sense of security and safety. But what happens if you lose your job? The sense of security and safety is gone. And as a result, people get into depressions, they do all kinds of negative actions. Sometimes they even don't want to live. And this leads us to the foundation of power, and that is life. If you don't have life, power doesn't matter. So power has to be connected to life, power of life. At the highest level, of course, to power of love. And where is the origin of love? Mother, father, child. So house, family house, has natural connection to power of love and power of life. Those two are connected. And I think that we need to look at return to appreciation of family houses and develop ways of creating sense of security within them again. In practice, it would mean that we have to change, transform thinking about real estate and how people get homes and how people get apartments, how real estate started shifting value from continent to continent and created giant chaos throughout the whole world. So we have to come back to this understanding that without security and safety in a family house, people perish. Sooner or later, people perish, either biologically or through wars or through violence. So we have to return to the foundations of power, which is family house, and develop understanding of how to apply it in contemporary ways. Traditionally, in Europe, the function of the king was not to constantly give executive orders and work like a judge. The primary function was to rule personally as head of household, head of the royal household, but then also as head of household of the land that had primary duty to make sure everybody had a place to live. That was the original function of true king. So we have to understand why was it that important for the king, who represents power of God, to focus on the dwelling places of all people in his realm. Because if the king's realm doesn't have security and safety of life and love within the context of family homes, then the whole kingdom is fallen apart, is going to collapse. So we have to understand why creation of security and safety in our family houses is foundation of security and safety for the whole land. This would require returning to thinking of our ancestors. It's very easy for me because I never lost that connection to understanding that without a family house, a person is so weak that all power from that person is gone. When you look today at shelters for the homeless, there is no power there. And once a person goes through the trauma of such lack of housing, powerlessness, it's virtually impossible to come back. So we may have the whole nation that is really a homeless nation because the nation doesn't have the understanding of the value of family house. Let's look at the United States of America. It has extremely sophisticated politics. It has concept of presidential authority in a White House, but there is no concept of national house, of house for the whole nation. It just doesn't exist, was never developed. First, in colonies, the house was in England, and then after independence, the focus became on politics and authority of elected officials and the concept of family housing as foundation for the national peace was gone. It was just never transferred from England to the United States of America, and it never created a philosophy that would understand, that would search for the truth and shape of American house. So when we got rid of the concept of the king, George Washington didn't want to bother with this. He didn't want to bother with the concept of house for the whole nation. It was too much for him. And I understand, because he went through a tremendous revolution, a very dangerous time. But I think that today, with the younger generations, we are in a great place to develop that vision of American house. We have the vision of American states, but they are all homeless. America as a country is homeless. But with the concept of the house, it immediately gets connected to the land, because the house has to be on the land. And I think that when we come back to appreciation of that heritage from Roman Empire and Israel, and then other countries that developed it in Europe, then we will have vision of love and life. And when we have that, then the whole focus is on new life, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and from this develops ways of organizing this life in addition to the house in the city, but not at the expense of that concept of the house. So today I'd like to stress the importance of this, and I ask the Lord for a miracle of American house. Let us all experience it and go into the future with security and safety of everybody having a place